now that you've made the decision to overseed your yard, there are certain steps you want to follow. The first of that is an assessment of your actual yard. Starting with my front yard here, what I'm going to be looking for: signs of summer stress, heat or drought, insects, where do I have any weeds in my front yard, along with traffic damage and anything else that might be contributing to the current state. In my yard in particular, this is where Midas runs, right through here and all over in general, but definitely in the middle is predominantly where he does a lot of his hard landing. Along with, this is primarily his restroom over in this area. So we kind of look at my front yard as Midas's dog park, and that's okay. So he tears it up in the summer, tears it up in the winter, spring and fall we overseed. And this is looking a lot better than it did when we bought the place. But so when I look at my front yard, I have areas of stress and some thinness underneath trees where my shade is really thick. I'm not going to change any of that. I just have to overseed every single year. But pretty obvious signs as to why it looks the way it does. Not a ton of weeds, which is encouraging. I don't really see any, which is the goal I try to hand pull as I see throughout the year. Really haven't done too much as far as chemicals, with herbicides or fertilizers. Just trying to let the grass grow, stay off of it as much as I can with mowing and water extra. But with this, generally our pattern is in 8 weeks it'll look fantastic, and it'll stay that way for about 8 weeks, and then it looks terrible and we do it all over again. But this is my front yard. Pretty easy to assess the signs that I have in here of stress, because I know exactly why. If it's something new in your yard, that's where it can get a little tricky, and that's where knowing your yard and the history on it and what it's done in the past is very important. This is a good time to create a log if you've never done that. Writing stuff down as when you've done it, how much, and as much information as you can remember year to year, the easier it will get for you. But now that we've gone over my front yard, I'll move over to my side yard. I've got some other issues going on there for other reasons, and so we'll show you that in a little bit more depth. So on my side yard, I've got issues with my driveway where the water drains off. We've had a terribly tough time keeping seed in this area where you see some of that stress. Just from washout. Even with lightly irrigating, there's enough water that it's fortunately how it drains. Earlier this summer we put down sod to try to, more than anything, just get some material there to hold the seed in place this fall. So I wasn't really too concerned about the sod surviving. Obviously I wanted it to, but more than anything I just needed something different than bare dirt. All my backyard largely drains down to the front curbs where we had it graded. So this is a known issue for me. It's the reason why I also have, it's pretty much the only spot in my whole yard where I have a large amount of weeds. We've got quite a bit of spurge coming in along our driveway where the sod didn't do too well, especially where the water kind of pours in quickly, and it just was, a whole mess. So we're going to overseed down in here. I do have some spots with my neighbor on his side where my dog uses the restroom, but I water all this and irrigate it all and take care of it, so Midas is allowed to use it as a restroom, and we just repair it in the fall to make it look better. But side yard's doing okay. Midas doesn't do quite as much fetch on this side, so it handles not as much traffic for him, so it does a little bit better. But you can tell a little bit further down along the side of our house, that's kind of our pathway to our backyard as well as to our trash can. So we get a lot of traffic there right along the base, and it doesn't do well, coupled with the fact that the drainage goes through there. So again, sod, we're going to try to seed it again this year, in this fall, try to get it to thicken up. Long term, we're planning on putting a stepping path to try to eliminate some of that traffic going to the backyard, so hopefully that will help the grass do better. It's a whole nother project for another day, but in the short term, we're going to overseed it. I know until I get an alternative option for that pathway, I'm going to probably have to do it every spring and every fall just to repair that damage. But overall, the side yard's not doing too bad, but I do have some weeds. damage and stress that I know for a number of reasons, and we're just going to seed it again. We'll move on to the backyard. So moving into the last section of my yard is my backyard. It's the area that's doing the best. It's where Midas is on the least. It's where we're on the least. We do have a garden, so that we do get some traffic leading in that direction and a little bit around the edge as we just tend the garden. Stuff that I know and expect, and until I change something about that, it's going to be there. So I'll overseed, aerate, and do the works to it to try to help it recover. I do have some spots in my yard that the water just wasn't enough. I've got areas where it looks incredibly healthy, but overall, considering the factors we had this summer, heat and drought, I'm not too concerned. Most of this will bounce back tremendously well once our temperatures drop down, but it's more about wanting to do the best practices for my yard. So I'm going to aerate, overseed, and power rake it. I think doing that on a consistent schedule allows me to not need to use many chemicals on my yard, no pre-emergence, very little fertilizer, by just keeping the grass healthy, watered well, mowing correctly, and thick and healthy. I mean, this is a fairly thick yard. This was almost 100% Bermuda when we started, and there's hardly any coming back, but we've seeded it now 3 years, twice a year, and it's looking that way, and we take care of it and nurture it as best as we can. But overall, my backyard's doing very well. There's one small spot on the inside of my fence where we do have a bit more concentrated traffic, where it's stressed out a little bit more. It's where I kind of turn in and out with my mower consistently whenever I mow, but I'm just going to overseed it and not worry about it until I do something different with the entrance to my backyard. It's just going to be an issue. But overall, very satisfied. More along doing these steps to my backyard because I can, and because I'm wanting to do best cultural practices to my lawn that I can. So at this point, you've gone through your yard area by area. You're well more versed into hopefully why it looks the way that it does, and you can start to make that plan going forward. Your next first step is going to be really to measure up and get an idea of how much square footage you have. That way you can calculate your seed usage as well as fertilizer, and just have a general idea of how much square footage you have in your yard that you're managing. From there, we're going to switch over to irrigation mode and get that calibrated, set up, show you how to run, program, at least with my system. Obviously not everybody has what I have, but the concepts and theories are all generally the same. We'll show you as much information as we can. But from there, we'll get irrigation going and then start on the actual seeding process, getting the prep work taken care of. So this is how we're going to measure up my yard, is with the plot measuring wheel. It's a digital measuring device. I've got it linked to my iPhone. I'm going to be able to start in one point, go around the outline of my property, come back to the front, and it'll calculate that square footage for me. So let's give that a go. So we've done our measurements. Front yard we're about 1,700, side we're at 14, and the backyard we're at 2,700 square feet. So right at 5,800 square feet total, just shy of 6. So I'll use that as my round number. But I know in my front yard I want to go heavy to repair the damage, so we're going to up that a little bit. The side yard, I've got some areas where I want to increase that usage, and then the backyard will stay pretty standard. We're going to call standard 4 to 5 pounds. We'll say 5 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So in my yard, it's times 6. Should be 30 pounds of seed for a standard seeding. I know I'm going to want to go a lot heavier in the front and the side, so add an extra 20 pounds in there. Should give me right at 50 pounds, which is a bag of seed. should cover my yard for what we're looking to do. If I go a bit heavier, I'm not too concerned about that. I do want to get grass seed down. But at this point, you, myself, we know how to calculate how much grass seed you should actually be planting. You want to be aware of that. There is a correct rate at which this seed needs to go down. So knowing your measurements on your yard will help you know if you're doing it correctly and answer the how much seed should I put down question. But from this point, we're going to go ahead and switch over to irrigation, go through everything needed to start up the system, get it checked out, adjusted, and set properly for seeding. And then from there, we'll look to get started with our prep work.